Are you struggling to get the back three to work in Football Manager 2024? Well, in this video, we're going to look at the top 5 tactics that actually use a back 5 or a back 3 system and have actually been successful with it. So you'll see what has worked for other creators, you see what you can use as player roles or tactical instructions that can help you actually get good results if you're playing with the back 3. This can help you set up your own tactic, or you can use some of these tactics that have worked and try to get good results with them. I've currently won the league with Atletico Madrid, and I'm currently also first in La Liga. I've won the league before, and I'm currently sitting in first place, and I'm also using a back 3 system here with Atletico Madrid. So by the end of this video, I'm also going to show you the tactic that I'm using in La Liga with Atletico Madrid to actually get good results in the game. So let's get into it. The first tactic that we're looking at here is a traditional back 5. It's called the SS or Losa, labeled as back 5. There are 3 central defenders and of course 2 complete wing backs on attack city, but instead of having them in the wing back strata, they're actually playing where fullbacks are supposed to be. So you have complete wing backs on attack, there you have ball playing defenders on defend and 1 central defender. Instead of central midfielders, they have defensive midfielders, one as a DLP and the other as a roaming playmaker on support. And up front you have an inside forward on attack and another advanced forward on attack. I'm not sure about player instructions, so I just have to click each of these players one by one. Okay, the inside forward on the left hand side has a player instructions, but I'm going to attach a link in the description so you can download this tactic by yourself. The ball playing defenders also have instructions, but if we look at the team's mentality, there's a positive mentality for the tactic, and they're also playing with an extremely wide attacking width. They're playing the ball out of defense. I think they have the numbers to do that as well, so you have a lot of players here you can play through. You have looking for the overlaps. That's because you have complete wing backs on attack DT and inside forwards also playing on attack, so you can actually look for the overlap there. They're running at the defense, playing low crosses, and they're also playing short passing with extremely high tempo. In transition, they're counter-pressing and also playing counter-attacking, but instead of the goalkeeper distributing it to the centre-backs, I think there's a problem here with the tactic, because if it was me, I would ask my goalkeeper to distribute to the centre-backs, but the tactic creator here is asking the goalkeeper to distribute to the full-backs, so you may just have to weigh your options in there. So here's another issue. There's a high press and a standard defensive line, but I noticed that there's a huge space in between. But I think the fact that you have a DLP and a roaming playmaker in here and inside forwards on attack DT, it sort of helps because there might be people occupying the space after all. So I think that kind of balances everything. There's also prevention goalkeeper distribution with much more often trigger press, and they're getting stuck in. So I do like the shape of this one because it's not something I see very often in Football Manager, having a flat back 5 like this, so it could work out eventually. The next tactic that we're looking at is Mourinho's second generation. It's also a 5, like a back 5 in defense, but this time they're wing backs on attack DT, so that's something that looks to really work in Football Manager, I guess. But in defensive midfield you have 2 second volantes, and instead of inside forwards you have advanced, or you have attacking midfielders on attack and an advanced forward on attack. This time all 3 are ball playing defenders. Just to be sure if they have any instructions yet, they do, so I'm going to attach the tactic for you so you can download it. Looking at the mentality, it's called the assembler tactic, by the way. I think I forgot to mention the name. It's called the assembler, and it's a balanced mentality. This time the team isn't playing out of defense, but they're exploiting the flanks and looking for the overlaps on both flanks. They're also passing into space and playing low crosses. Their passing is shorter with extremely high tempo, and they're also running out of defense. Looking at the way the team plays in transition, goalkeeper this time is distributing it quickly because I think they have numbers up front in the attacking midfielders. He's also rolling it out, but not to anybody, so that's kind of confusing as well. Counter pressing and counter is also instructed here. Out of possession, the team is playing with a high press, but this time a much higher defensive line, and they're also pressing much more often with the provincial goalkeeper distribution that they're also trying to get stuck in. There's going to be a lot of movement in this tactic, so I think I understand why they're going for a much higher defensive line. This back line is going to be all the way up, and your second volantes are going to be somewhere near the box as well, and the only players that are going to offer width for you are the wing backs that are playing on attack DT. So I'm happy that most of the tactics that we're looking at are actually using 5 defenders as opposed to 3 and 2 wing backs. So you have wing backs on support DT this time, but you also have ball playing defenders all on defend. This is also an assembler tactic, but it's the Simeone final adaptation 3. So assembler tactic, I think that's the tactic creator, the assembler. Balanced mentality is also the instruction here, and the team is playing very similar to the Jose Mourinho tactic. They're exploiting the flanks, but they're not playing out of defense. They're passing into space, same tempo and passing directness. And if you look at the team in transition, counter press, counter, distribute quickly, and they're also rolling it out as well. So it's very similar to the Jose Mourinho tactic that we saw before. Same high press with much higher defensive line, and they're also pressing relentlessly and getting stuck in. The player roles are quite different because you have 2 second volantes this time on attack DT, but you have a protector in the anchor man on defender is helping them down there, and you have an advanced forward and a complete forward on support as your strikers. GYR's Kang the Conqueror has to be the most adventurous version of the back 5 that I've seen. He has a libero on support duty, two ball playing defenders, and wing backs that are on support. They are playing in the fullback position, mind you. And then if you look at the central midfielders, that's where it gets really, really scary. You have two mezzalas playing on attack duty, and you have two wingers playing on attack. So the team is actually going to try to exploit the flanks a whole lot. You have an advanced forward playing on attack duty, and I think the libero is going to be the one operating as the kind of playmaker in the defensive midfield position. So that's interesting. There's also an attacking mentality for this tactic. And look at the way the team plays, it makes a lot of sense that they're exploiting the flanks. If you look at the way the team is set up in transition, they're not distributing it quickly this time, but the goalkeeper can decide who he wants to roll the ball out to, and they're also counter-pressing and countering. If you look at the players, the way they set up out of possession, no more a much higher defensive line, it's just a higher defensive line with a high press, and they're also preventing the short goalkeeper distribution while playing with a much more often trigger press. Now, if you thought Kang the Conqueror was the most aggressive version, this is ridiculously adventurous and aggressive, to be honest. Attacking mentality, but observe this. You have three liberos on support. That is literally the tactic. NK7 tres liberos. You have wing backs on attack DT, and you have a DLP also on support. You have a roaming playmaker on support DT and a metala on attack. So basically, I don't think there's anybody in this tactic that is actually defending. So I would only recommend this tactic for a very attacking system where you're planning to only try score goals. Let's say you're down by 1 goal and you need to get a goal back, or it's almost running out of time and you need to actually score a goal. You can go ahead and employ this tactic because it's very, very adventurous, and I don't see anybody defending. You have a shadow striker here towards the right hand side on attack DT, and then that advanced forward on attack. The mentality is attacking, and if you look at the way the team plays, they're playing with a much shorter passing directness. I do enjoy this. I don't see it very often in Football Manager, but much shorter passing with a slightly higher tempo. They're running at defense, and they're also passing into space. They're playing low crosses and walking the ball into the box. So despite the fact that they're all over the place with their movement, there's going to be kind of control in the way they actually move the ball around. So that's kind of like balancing what the player has gone to, or what the tactic creator has gone to do with player roles. So you kind of just quieted them down by playing a much shorter possession-based style of play. Instead of the counter press, the team is going for only the counter instruction. The goalkeeper is distributing to the center backs and taking short kicks. Out of possession is a high press and a high defensive line. They're also playing much more often trigger press and preventing the short goalkeeper distribution. So I do like the fact that this tactic is quite different. It's not something I see very often on Football Manager, so it is an interesting one to actually play with. Now, at the start of the video, I told you guys that I would show you the tactic that I'm using to dominate La Liga with Atletico Madrid, and currently we're sitting in first place, like I mentioned. We have a game against Real Madrid, but looking at the way the tactic is set up, I do have 3 systems, and this is the 5-2-1-2 system that I'm using for Atletico Madrid. I've tweaked it a bit since I won the league, but I'm going to also attach a link in the description so you can watch the complete version of how this tactic actually evolved and how it came to be. I have a super keeper on defend, 1 wide centre back on the left hand side, and 1 ball playing defender on the right, and I have a ball playing defender on cover duty playing in the center. I have a wing back on attack duty, and I have a wing back on support duty. Each of these player roles has been carefully selected to match the player that is actually in the role. So I do go on to tweak the tactics from time to time when I have a different player playing in the role. So you have a defensive midfielder on support DT. These roles rarely change. The defensive midfielder on support and the ball winning midfielder on support. These roles rarely change. And I have an advanced playmaker on support DT playing in the number 10 role. I have 2 pressing forwards, 1 on support and 1 on attack. And the Rasmus Højlund role is usually the one that is playing on support, but he has complained a lot that he doesn't like the supporting role. So once in a while, I do switch him to play as a pressing forward on attack, and then I remember to change him back to play as a pressing forward on support. Mentality is attacking, but as at the time when I won the league, I had a slightly shorter and slightly lower tempo playing. But because I've evolved from that and I need to play a quicker style of play, I've gone for just the standard and slightly higher tempo, and it kind of works well because in the game I can still go on to play shorter passing and walk the ball into the box if I want, but both those instructions are not really set in here. I'm also playing, being more expressive, not the normal Atletico discipline style of play. In our transition, we're only counter and counter pressing, nothing more. The goalkeeper is Yano Black. He can choose to do whatever he wants, and then you can play with a high line and a high defensive, or a high press and a high defensive line. That is all I have, and the trigger press is just much more often trigger press. We're not forcing the short goalkeeper distribution to go long. We actually want him to play it short, so I'm not playing this as prevent short goalkeeper distribution anyway. So I use this tactic along with a 4-3-3 system that is an alternative version in case I have other players that I want to bring in. So that's how I go about doing it. That's what I'm doing this season anyway. And I think I did half of last season. I had an alternative version. So this is basically the shape that in my back 3 and how we go about to do. But if you need to see the detailed version of this tactics, you can actually check out the next video how I went about building this tactic. If you did enjoy this video, remember to leave a like on it. If you have any more questions about Football Manager tactics, you can let me know in the comment section, and do well to subscribe to the channel. It does help us a lot. I'll see you in the next video.